It's showtime. I started
What?
PT today.
For what?
My butt.
What?
Okay.
What are you
So here's this.
talking about?
No, I want to talk about this. And I feel like I need to air my grievances publicly about my butt because, yeah, I'm still a little bit slow and behind. Sorry, everybody, but here we go. So about 3 years ago, I started getting like a pain in my right glute, and then it started shooting down my hamstring and into my right ankle. And then I'd stand up, I'd stretch, or I'd do something, and then it would go away, and it wasn't problematic. I just thought, oh, this is a harbinger of things to come, but I'm just not going to do anything about it because, you know, I'm in denial of how old I am and what I'm not capable of because I'm capable of so many things. And I'm, an endurance athlete. So I just shove it down and shove it down and shove it down and shove it down. It's how I get through the long distances. Anyway, cut to the chase. About a year ago, it started bugging me every day. So it's not like I can't do things. It's just that it's very uncomfortable and it's like a dull ache kind of in the middle of my right glute. So the butt cheek. And then I've got lower back pain and then it radiates. So I started doing massage and acupuncture and that helped for like a minute, a couple of days. And then I would go back and the pain would come back. And I was taking care of some things last few weeks ago, no, like a month ago now. And the woman who does like all my aesthetics, her husband is a orthopedist. So and I've seen him before. So she said, I'm just going to call him and see if he can see you today. So I went in, he saw me. I was in an MRI on a Sunday and the rest is history. I've got an L5S1 herniated disc. I've got some degeneration just above it. It is not tendinopathy from menopause or any of that stuff. We did all the testing and I started PT today. So part of what I have to do is sit with my hips square. I can't sit on my pillow anymore, which raises me up. So you and I had to adjust the computer. And I have some exercises that I have to do, and I have to see him once a week. And he's a fast talker. And I told him he was judgy because, he was, well,
So
he was watching me.
Pain in your ass. You have a literal
I
pain.
literally have a pain in my ass. And sometimes it's, people who are very close to me, but for the most part, it is a pain in my ass. But he was watching me, like how I stand and how I walk, but he has like these judgy eyes.
Yeah, well,
and I
you're
told
doing it
him,
wrong, obviously.
I feel like you're judging me. Yeah, I feel like you're judging me, but I kind of like it. And he's like, I'm evaluating you. And I said, I know.
He's going to literally now kick your ass so
now
that
he's going to kick
don't
my ass.
go down this road again. But we know this about each other, but I also had a herniated disc. And the solution, mine was stress related, where it I don't know which L mine was. I didn't pay that much attention. Plus it was in Germany and they were speaking German and I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew it was not good. Because he said if you're going to poop your pants over the weekend, get straight to the emergency room and you're going to have to get emergency surgery. That was his feedback to me on a Friday afternoon when I came for some kind of hope. The pain was nonstop. It's just really, really extreme. But then the moment I landed to move back to the US, pain went away. And then I started going to India every year and doing my Ayurveda, and that has really, really helped. And I haven't had pain since. So I hope he can help you with the pain in your ass. You're not a pain in my ass. So that's the most important thing. But welcome to Shooting the Shit in a Skirt.
Hi, everyone.
We're just two chicks that met in our 50s, and we were like, hey, where have you been my whole life? And we have these life-changing conversations about herniated discs and asses and
pooping,
faces and therapists and all this good stuff that are life-changing. And so we decided to hit record, and here we are live. And I'm KL.
And I'm Ricky. And today we are talking about timing. And how trusting it can change everything. And I think at the core of this conversation, it's really about patience, because sometimes the problem isn't necessarily the effort, or the talent, or even confidence. It's just timing. And we'll talk about more about what that means. So like knowing when to push, when to pause, and when to walk away. Sounds like a country song, doesn't it? A little bit.
You know what's funny about timing is that your video and your voice are totally off, at least from what I can see on the video, because we're
Yeah.
live. And it's just kind of funny because we're talking about timing, and your timing is totally off today.
Timing is off. So just a note on that. Depending on how this goes, we may have to cut ourselves short because it seems to be getting worse as we go on. So
we're gonna keep going, and those that are going to stay with us live are going to love it, and those that are going to hear us on all the podcast channels are going to love it, and we're going to just roll with it because that's what we do.
Yes.
So Ricky, talk to us about a time in your life where maybe you pushed too hard and you were not as patient as you should have or would have wanted to be.
Oh my God. I mean, you and I talk about this a lot. That's the story of my life. Patience is not one of my core values, nor one of my virtues. So, I mean, there's so many instances, and I've talked about this many, many times on this podcast that, blind essence is my brand essence. No, blind enthusiasm. Oh my goodness. Blind enthusiasm. My PT rewired my brain somehow. Blind enthusiasm is my brand essence. And because it is, I tend to jump in feet first before really examining all things. So sometimes that's in responding to an email that's either excited me or upset me. Sometimes that's accepting a role that maybe I didn't spend enough time digging into. Sometimes it's buying, way too many pairs of shoes at the Nordstrom anniversary sale back in the day. It manifests itself in a variety of ways. For me, I can't think of a moment in time. I can think about clients, but I want to ask you the same question first, because I think it's a good one. And then I have a little client story because we were just working on 2026 planning yesterday. And I think it'll be a good example. So, but tell us all about a time you pushed too early. I'm curious because I know you have a lot of these because I know who you are and I know how you operate in the world and you want to get stuff done.
Yeah, I also did not incorporate patience into my values. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm impatient, but I don't have a lot of tolerance for nonsense and BS. And I think,
which is hilarious because we're friends.
Because you have a lot of BS in your life. Well, in my case, corporate. So I spent 30 years in corporate. And this isn't necessarily an example of pushing too early, but of not tolerating nonsense. Politics are not something that I enjoy. I just enjoy getting shit done. Like there's a problem we need to solve. It doesn't matter who created the process that we have. It doesn't matter. It's not a mistake. It's just the moment in time that we're in, we need to change. We need to lift up the hood. We need to figure out a better way to do things. And people in corporate politically don't always love that. And so I butted up against that a lot in my career. So I definitely pushed. Again, not whether it's too early or not too early. One could argue, I think, finding the best solutions for things, there's never a too much or a too early. It's just, navigating nonsense and people's feelings getting hurt. That's just not something that's interesting. But I think there was a lot of times in my life where I let things really flow, but I think I gave this example in a previous podcast about when I moved to Germany and I was pushing for this job opportunity. So I had met Reiner. He was here on a secondment. He had to move back to Germany, and Hayden and I we were a family by now. We wanted to move with him. And there was this opportunity to get a sales job, and I wanted this job. And it was the only opportunity that I had. Reiner was going back, and it's like, we got to get this done. And the guy offered me the job, 30% pay cut. And I said to him, listen, like, this is extreme for me to take a 30% pay cut, but I'm willing to do it for the experience. It's 3 years. I, again, Kale today would never accept a 37% pay cut, and nor should anyone listening. But it was really an opportunity, and I was kind of thinking like I'm going there for a little bit personal. Like obviously, it was going to help me with my career, but I pushed so hard, and it was not the right opportunity, and I almost said yes, like this close to saying yes. And I had said to the guy, I said, listen, I believe very strongly in my sales ability. So if at the end of the year, when I'm successful and I hit all of my targets, I would expect you to bonus me and we can make up the gap there. And his answer was, unfortunately, Carrie Lynn, we are going to have to pay you the same as the guy next to you surfing the internet all day. So I don't have the capacity to provide that as an option for you. And that was when I said, hell no, because I was always paid commission. Like I always wrote my own ticket because I was really good at sales. So I turned the job down and it was really devastating, but I was pushing so hard. The moment I released, literally, and I know I've said this, I've told this story before, I was sitting at Reiner's desk. It was the day after I declined it. I was flying home that day. Reiner had already flown back to the US, and I'm sitting at his.
That's when that phone call came in. I know this story. Yes.
Thank you, Nicole Mueller. And I picked up the phone and I'm like, hello, thinking maybe she thought she was catching Reiner. She's like, Kale, I'm so glad that you answered. I have a guy on his way who's looking for someone just like you. So it was this pushing. And the moment I released the act, what was meant to come to me came to me. And I don't think I put two and two together at that time. Now looking back and being the woo-woo girly that I am, I look at all of these examples of things where if I had just let go more and also followed my gut and my instinct, it would have been a lot less trauma, a lot less worry, a lot less nonsense stories that I made up in my head.
Yeah. The dog on the bone in a lot of ways is great. That tenacity, love to say dog on a bone. I don't know why, but the tenacity is a great thing in a role or in a space or on a project that matters to you. But there's so much irony in there, right? About what we push for because it's a challenge. And nobody's going to tell us we can't do this.
Nobody puts baby in the corner.
Right. I get that in a lot of ways because sometimes it's hard for me to see the forest for the trees when I'm really pushing towards something that, to your point, may or may not even be right for me, for my team, for whatever. It's interesting, when I when I blew up my agency career in 2019, and that was, something I'd done for many, many, many years, like quarter of a century, many years. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I completely lost my train of thought. There you go. Doesn't matter. Clearly it was not important. I was going to try. I had
we were talking about pushing. We were talking about pushing too hard. Here's the really beautiful thing. No matter what, everything is happening for us, not to us. And so I turned that job down, or that job would have been taken from me, or the contract wouldn't have worked. Like the universe also has this beautiful divine way of bringing what we need to learn in the moment. So even though like there was another time in my career where I said yes to an opportunity that very quickly realized this was not the best decision. I didn't really think I had any signs or signals that it was the wrong decision at the time. But it was still where I was supposed to be for that 2 years, even though there was a values misalignment, even though I was getting migraines and it was clearly impacting my health. It wasn't the right place for me, but it was for that 2 years because I was able to learn and grow. So even when maybe you don't trust your gut or your instincts and you say yes, there's always a way to get out of it. There's always a solution, and you have to take what you can out of that situation and learn
and apply it. Yeah, I mean, I did something very similar when this was not the point I was trying to make earlier, but I did something very similar when I blew up my entire career, and I took a role that I thought was going to move me forward in one way. And while it was not a fit for me and it didn't meet my core values, it moved me forward in a completely different way. And I would not have started the Make partnership had I not had that job and spent time learning all of the things I learned on that job, but also learning all the things that I didn't want to do or I didn't want to happen or the ways I didn't want to feel in business. And I agree with you. It makes a huge difference. This topic is very similar. I think it's the deeper dive into the conversation we had a few episodes ago about the two most important words in the English language, which are yes and no. And I think this is just that next click down that we really start to unpack patience and what that looks like, and being proactive and being responsive versus reacting. So is this a good time? I want to tell this story about my client from yesterday, because I felt like we had a massive breakthrough. So I love these clients. They were a vendor of mine when I was at the big agency job. When I left there, we kept in contact. They asked me a lot of business growth type of questions. And finally, we made it formal when I started my company back in April of 2022, right? So it's almost my 4-year anniversary, which is very exciting. And they've been a long-standing client, which, is spectacular, right? We've never lost hope. And there's always new things to address every single year. So we kick off in every January with we talked about this, I think, on the intention setting episode. What was the hardest thing you did this year that moved you forward? What was your greatest achievement that moved you forward this year? And then what is your intention? So that's how I framed up this year's conversation for them. And we got onto the topic of intention setting, and the CEO's clarity, for a variety of reasons. That's not the point here. And he and I have been working on his for a while, but his business partner, who is the head of sales, is a reactionary guy, right? He is a relationship builder. He is a reactionary guy. So he wants to make shit happen. He's a shit shooter like the rest of us here on this podcast, but he wants to make stuff happen. And a lot of times what he'll do is he'll get his phone, he'll read what's going on there, and then he'll shoot an email out to the team and say, any opinions here, or any good ideas, or whatever. And no one responds. So then he's left with no response. Then he follows up with the CEO and says, help me here. I don't know how to respond to this client. So a lot of what we talked about yesterday, and ironically, it's why today is such a timely conversation that you and I even started this morning, is his intention is slow down to speed up. So be responsive, not reactive, right? The emails, read it. You don't need to react immediately to a client email. The part that we talked about that was really important, if you remember, I said he's a relationship builder. Relationships are built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. That applies to your clients, but that also applies to your internal teams. And if one of those things falls by the wayside, there's a fracture in the relationship. So in order to be a good steward of his team and a good steward of the client, one of the things we talked about is read the email, digest the email, come back to the email, and then send the missive out to your team and delineate each person what you need from them so that everybody has a task. They know how to respond. And then what you end up with is cohesive information that then you can calibrate and share with the client. So not only do you show up as the expert, but you're taking care of your team and you're taking care of the client. And he went on to talk about people on the team here have deep smarts. And I hadn't heard that phrase before, but really it's their superpower. And he said, and I don't have those deep smarts. And I stopped him right there. And I said, you're a relationship builder. That's your superpower. That's where your deep smarts live. And you have to build relationships internally and externally. And sometimes that's just taking a step back, even for a half an hour, right? Technology has made us irresponsibly reactive.
Yeah. Even if and there might be a time too where he didn't even need to get the insight from his people, or just from one of them to say, hey, your deep smart is X. I would love your input on what am I missing from this email? Am I overreacting? What can you help me fill in the blanks with? But that's the whole point about moving too fast. I love that. That's a really interesting example. So did he hear you? And do you think he's going to be able to slow down to speed up?
Yeah, that is a great question. And here's why, because he's a Dr. Feel Good guy. Like he wants everybody to feel good. Everything's going great. And I have monthly one-on-one sessions with both of them. And then we do a group session every other month. And this is how I become his accountability partner, right? And check in on him, because now what we have is a system and a structure to check the boxes. And how is this working, and providing examples and talking about it and talking through it. And I think being able to quantify it with words for him was true magic, because you could feel the collective sigh of relief on the phone, on the call yesterday. And to your point, right? Like I'm way more woo than they are.
Yeah.
But right, for them, it's all, in context, and it's all about moderation. And I really think we had a huge breakthrough yesterday for him, which I love, because after working with them for, 3.5 years, we're still having breakthroughs. So the work that we're doing is still relevant. And I think what we have done is slowed their roll so that they can also speed up, because they hired me to help them grow at the end of the day. And I remember what I wanted to say before, and I think this is on that same vein. The year I resigned from my big career in 2019, my intention was courage. That next year was breathe. And you said something I think that is really important for you and for the two of us to remember, but also for everybody listening. When I took that role at that company that wasn't a fit for my core values, my intention was breathe that year, because I had worked with the smartest, most brilliant, creative people on the planet, according to no one else but me, and maybe a few people who were on my team. But really, like, I was pushed and uncomfortable and stimulated every day. And then I was going to a job where, in a lot of cases, and you guys can take this however you want, but I was going to be the smartest person in the room on my topic of growth and brand. And I put breathe into my arsenal of tools, because I knew that I wasn't going to have the people that push me and ask me the questions. Did I think about this the right way? Did you consider this? What about this perspective? Because I was a team of one. I was an independent contributor, and I wasn't going to have those people that were going to push on me in the same way. So it's really that patience and timing is really, like, I feel like it's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
And it happens over time,
Yeah. You know why?
and experience.
Yeah. Why? The reason for that is because the hustle culture has taught us that waiting or being intentional or taking a pause to breathe is actually weakness. So, we are taught that we need to go, 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 go. That's how we built our careers. That's how we grew.
Right.
We're taught that
Right.
we need to have everything together. And then there's fear that if I don't have it together, or I don't have a plan, then I'm being irresponsible. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. If I use that in my client work, I have clients who are so long overdue of wanting to exit from their organizations, and
Yeah.
they are so scared because it's kept them safe for 10 years or 15 years, or they're so, they're listening to the noise in their head or the news that this market is so hard. Well, it will be hard if we say it's hard. And, we can put all sorts of roadblocks in our mind to tell ourselves stories, but don't we want to tell ourselves a story that's going to work for us, not against us?
Yes.
So this idea of quitting my job without having a job, that's irresponsible, but it's not. It's being intentional about what you're going to do in that time and what are the actions that you're going to take. I'll give you an example. This morning I went to the dentist, and I love the dentist, by the way. He tells me
I do too.
my teeth are like
too.
cleaner than 99% of the people on this planet. And he says my teeth are like an 18-year-old. It's the only part of my body. So I love going to see him. He tells me every time.
I love him already.
I know he's a funny duck, but he tells me the same stories every time. And he told me that there was a woman that came in that had $20,000 worth of work needing to be done. And she was a nurse. And she said, I don't think she's ever been to the dentist. And he was like, how could you let that happen? I was like, well, that might not have been the right thing to say. But anyway, so my dentist today was complaining about the fact that his son is in college. And he's like, yeah, he's changed his major and he's going to change it 5 more times before he graduates.
Mm-hmm.
And there
Mhm.
was frustration. Like, how could he not know what he wants to do? I'm like, dude, I didn't know what I wanted to do till I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
I'm 54. Tell me even at 50 that I would have been launching my own company and I would have laughed at you. Tell me when I was at any age that I would be hosting a TV show, I would have laughed you out of the room. So the best laid plans, these are all not things within your control. As long as he's getting
Right.
an education and he's learning something and he'll find his way. We all find our path. And I think that what society thinks we're supposed to do is something that's a really big problem. Even with my daughter, she graduated college and we were like, go take a gap year. Even before she went to college, go take a gap year. We will help you. We will fund it. Go travel the world before you have to be responsible. No, all my friends are going to college. I can't take a gap year. She graduated college. No, I have to get a job. I have to get a job right away. And she started looking October before she graduated. Like
Right.
it's this what people might think of you as opposed to what really feels right. So it took
And what
me years
fuels
to learn
your
it.
soul?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted you. I love that you said that about Hayden because we had a big breakthrough with my son this week who's graduating college in May. It's April 30th, May 1st. So I'm not sure if I should say April or May. But my husband's from Italy. We have now, Lorenzo has come on board and decided that he is going to stay in Europe. So I bought him a one-way ticket yesterday for graduation. And he's indefinitely going to have a year where he figures it out. And the beauty is, as is the same for Hayden, his grandparents are there, his cousins are there, his family's there. So,
Oh,
all things being equal, I think this is far better experience than him going to work in a design agency because he's a photography major.
by the way,
And
not to mention, as a former CHRO, and I've looked at thousands of resumes, someone who takes that kind of a move, risk, I'm going to do something outside of the norm, his resume will stand out. First of all, that's hugely important.
brilliant.
Secondly, his Italian level is going to go through the roof. So he's now going
Right.
to be able to truly say that he's fluent in another language. And culturally, to leave home and move to another country by yourself, he's going to get props. I will help him also. How does he translate that into his interviews when he's ready? But like that is seriously massive. And I think and I love that story so much. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for him.
Me
What's
too.
interesting about the way that you and I now live, and you can call it woo-woo state, we can call it whatever you want. We believe in divine timing. We believe that everything happens for us. People, it's not logical. And I think when people aren't able to connect logic, rationale, and statistics, they like trusting the process is where it really gets challenging. And look, you and I both know this takes practice. This takes holding the
It
mirror
does.
up. You and I have done a lot of work. It just doesn't always have to be logical, but you do have to think about where in my body does this feel right or where does it not feel right? If it's neutral, maybe that's a hell no. And if it is like gut wrenching, like my vice grip sometimes in my stomach, like it's a hell no. It has to feel
Yeah.
like if my energy is there on something the next day and the next day and I can't stop thinking about it, it is a hell yes.
Yeah.
But I lean more into feeling and I'm okay being uncomfortable. And that's where I think a lot of people struggle is that discomfort.
I agree. And it's, a lot of it has to do with control, right? And when you cede that control and let the process do whatever the process does and not be tied to the outcome. I mean, you sent me a beautiful text yesterday or the day before regarding the thing that we're doing here, which I'm not going to talk about yet, in Arizona. But you just said, trust the process. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And that's all you said. And it gave me, I don't even know really how to explain it. I felt my entire system, because my shoulders were up to my ears because I didn't sleep, because there's, it means some financial, it means some lifestyle. Like there's a lot tied to this decision that we've made. And I promise I will share what it is, but I need to be
none of it
patient
worked
for a
for
little while
you.
longer. but it's if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And I know that in my heart of hearts, but sometimes just hearing it. So back to the conversation we had last week about the board of advisors, like sometimes just hearing it from your people, like my entire body let go. I think it was yesterday or the day before. It was an unbelievable feeling.
So look, I agree with the board of directors. I'm grateful that we have all these incredible people in our life that we can reach out to, but there's also lessons that we need to learn to regulate ourselves. And that is often what I say to my clients is that story that you're telling yourself working for you or against you? How is it serving you? And if it's not serving you, then let's replace that story.
Yeah.
So that story caused you stress. It caused you not to sleep. That's not helping your herniated disc. And that means the next day you didn't show up on your A game. None of that story was helping you. And so I always just come back to focus on the controllables. What about this situation can I control? None of it. I can control two things: how I show up, how I treat others. Full stop. So in this case, you did everything that you could possibly do, and now it truly requires letting go. And yes, it's so helpful to have those reminders, but there's that self-regulation. I was on several calls today with people who were like, yeah, well, the market is so hard, and yeah, my area is so niched, and it's going to take at least a year. Like, where are the stats showing that?
Right.
There are none. And like, again, just focus on like investing in yourself, holding the mirror up, and do the best that you can. And let's go.
Yeah. Thank you for this therapy session. I will put a check in the mail. And I'm wondering, are you covered in my insurance? Whoop, whoop.
I'm not covered by insurance.
So some stats I think are fascinating that we pulled just about moving too early or too late. 70% of career setbacks. I think this is really interesting from what you were talking about with your career. Like if you would have taken that job at 30% less than Reiner's ex-girlfriend, you wouldn't have been available for the amazing opportunity, right? 70% of career setbacks coming from moving too early or too late, not from lack of skill. So that that gut feeling, listen to it because it really matters. I went into that job. I did jump into the black hole, right? Like I quit my job without a job and it was brilliant because I had a plan. And I didn't have a job, but I had a plan. But I took that other job because I felt like I needed to. And I went in kicking and screaming. I was sobbing at my desk the week before, sobbing at home, having to start a job. I should have listened. I should have listened. I was absolutely experienced enough and skilled enough for the job. In fact, even though the company wasn't a fit for me and I learned a lot, it was the perfect job for me, but it didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. And I should have listened.
Yeah. Hindsight is 2020. And I'm sure, look, today it's a very different view. But hopefully this helps people who are trying to make big decisions. I think you also said something about the career setbacks and the lack. It's not coming from lack of skill. A lot of people also believe that they have to tick all the boxes before they can apply for a job. Women in particular, they don't apply for jobs unless they are hit 100%. I forget the stat for men. It's much, much lower. But you have so many transferable skills. You have so much knowledge. Stop waiting. Stop thinking that you're not enough. Stop thinking that you have to tick all the boxes. Just go for it. You'll figure it out. As long as you've got a million examples, I'm sure, in your life where you were resilient and you as long as you're a learner, you're educated, like, come on. We're not saving lives in rocket science here. We're not doing open heart surgery in the jobs.
Not yet, anyway. I think that might be next season's podcast.
Maybe, because we are unstoppable and we are capable of anything.
We can do a lot of things, right?
I want to share the next stat. Sorry, Ricky. Okay. People who pause before major decisions report 25% higher long-term satisfaction. Pausing to lean into how you feel, where it's a hell yes, or a hell no. And are you listening? Are you running to something? Are you running from something? Mine is always, if it grows a fungus on the side of my desk, it's a signal. It's a hell no. If it's not a hell yes for me, it's a no. And yeah, I continue to learn that every day.
Every
And
day,
sometimes
every
it's
day.
no, it's just a whisper. Sometimes, we're not always good at listening because it's really quiet. So give yourself that space before you make big decisions.
Okay, so I have a great example, and then I think we need to go into some of our reframing, because I do want to be aware of time today. Um,
Proud of you.
One of my clients, we do a lot of work with experience agencies. So the experiences are things that any human can experience in real time. So experience agencies create these experiences like sales centers or retail experiences or visitor experiences like the Empire State Building. And we were on the phone with them a couple of days ago, and I committed to a whole bunch of things. My agency brain came forward, right? I'm helping a client get project work and potentially get acquired. I'm not an agency service person any longer, but I offered up all these services. And then I got off the phone and I was like, oh, like I didn't even let my proactive, responsive self have a minute. I was just reacting because I wanted to move things along.
Yeah.
And so I've been hemming and hawing over the last couple of days about how do I pull back? What do I do? What do I say? And I got a note from one of the principals at this agency this morning that said, we actually can't afford to do any of this. So let's just work on the elevator pitch. And that's it. And I breathed a sigh of relief because I actually I've really been thinking about how I'm going to respond to the promises that I made that I actually can't fulfill. And frankly, my client is not going to pay me to do this stuff. So it was all really kind of volunteer work. So I think to your point, like we are guilty of it too, right? We are human. And sometimes we forget. And sometimes I just want to help. And right, I put my client
Who
at
are you
risk.
helping? Who are you
I put my
hurting?
time at risk.
Yeah.
What was I running to or from that I had to offer all this up? That agency is perfectly capable of doing all of it with our input from a software product perspective.
Yeah.
That's it.
Question is, look, life keeps hitting us with these kinds of lessons until we actually learn, right? So your
Right.
awareness is probably much quicker than it ever was. The question
Right.
is, why does this keep showing up in your story? And what do you need to take away from
Agreed.
this so it does not show up in your story again? So the next time that trigger comes in, you are able to be like, oh, no, 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 not this time.
Yeah.
That you're
Yeah.
able to recognize it faster. Because when it happens to me, I'm like, I failed that test. Or I'm like, oh no, you don't got me this time because I'm on to you, universe. So
Yeah.
I would take that extra step. I'm sure you already did because we studied the same stuff, but to really like write down what were you feeling? What was that reaction? What came up for you? What was the
Right.
trigger? And how do you not have that show up for you in the future?
Yeah.
Again, if we don't hold the mirror up and we don't, question these situations, we just keep going back in these old
We
patterns.
do. I'm extremely over communicative, as anybody who knows me well knows. And one of the things I did is I told my CEO client, like, here's what I did. I'm going to have to backtrack out of it. I'm not asking for your advice. I'm just putting it out into the universe. So
Yeah.
you know that, 25 years of a career in the service industry, like it doesn't just, and I've been gone, it'll be 7 years in July. So I've been gone 6.5 years. It doesn't just plop out of your system the next day. In fact, I had a client once who said, there's a stink that comes along with you when you leave an agency. And it's interesting. You're right. It's about self-awareness. I realized it as soon as I did it. And fortunately, there's not much I have to do to make it right.
For them, but for
For
yourself.
them, but for
Yeah.
me, and I think there's some key reframes here that are really important. Like, right, there's data in that. There's data in how I show up. There's data in the timing. It's okay to resist, right? I could have pushed back. I can push back on many things, as can you, because it's not really about fear, but we think it's fear. If
Or letting people
comfortable,
down or
exactly, all of that, right? As a people pleaser, I operate from a place of love, not fear. I operate, from commitment and soul, not from story and ego, but it still creeps in there all the time,
Yeah.
and simple
It's nice
or
to be needed, Ricky. You know how to do this stuff in your sleep. And so it's also like, oh, pick
ding,
me,
ding,
pick
ding, ding,
me.
ding,
Like
ding, ding,
it's
ding, ding, ding.
exciting because
Yeah.
I know I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
solve that for you. And they're your clients. So you also want to keep providing alternative solutions and have them keep coming back to you. So like it's logical. It's really, really logical. But the question is, what are you going to do next time? What are you going to put in place
Right.
as
I'm
a
going to
pause
call you.
gap? Like, wait a minute, let me come back to them in 24 hours. And if I still feel like I want to help, then I'll put that on the table. But let me give myself that space. I think space is what people don't give themselves. They're moving too fast, just like your client who is like, I got to slow down to speed up. And this like response, and you get inundated in your Slack message. And if you didn't answer the Slack message, then you get a text message. It's like, slow your roll, dude. Like it's gotten ridiculous. I see videos about it all the time, and my clients are facing the same thing as well.
Yeah. And urgency is not, urgency is often external pressure, right? It's not the internal truth that we feel. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. And you're right. Practice makes perfect. I mean, again, I'm going to have to pay you a fortune for this therapy session today. So good.
And
so just because you
pay me with a
can,
trip, because our favorite thing to do is travel and see each other. And then let's just meet each other at the spa in Tucson, Oprah's favorite. And, we'll just make some magic and
make it happen. So what I always love to say, besides be there or be talked about, is just because you can doesn't mean you should, and doesn't mean it's time, right? So there's that internal feel that you really have to acknowledge. Sometimes you can just shove it down and move on, because maybe that internal feel is fear versus that intuition. But I think, what we've been talking about is patience. Like, analyze what it is. Take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes, go for a walk outside and really think about what your response is before you respond, whether that's honestly taking a job, offering up services that you really can't provide, right? And on behalf of a potential client. So I was even like so removed. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Or saying yes to going for dinner and then you don't want to go for dinner, or, saying yes to an invitation, right? Like, I think there's two things that come up for me. I am in such flow state, but ease doesn't mean easy always. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
Because, I picked up a really interesting project that twisted my brain in a way that hasn't twisted in a while. And I was like, ooh, this is good. This is so good for me. And it was so right. So, there's this dichotomy between ease and hard and hustle, and it all comes back to feeling and really just being absolutely clear that you are taking a beat to see what is happening in my body. How do I make decisions? How does my body tell me? If it's a hell yes or a hell no.
Right.
And if it's I know we always like to leave everybody with a framework, which is just really such a perfect segue. And it's called timing check. So before making a move, ask yourself these 4 things. I'll take the first 2. Ricky, I'll take the second 2.
Dealio.
Is this coming from alignment or anxiety? Anxiety rushes, alignment steadies. Mm-hmm. And number 2, do I feel expanded or contracted? Your body knows before your brain. So use this as an example. How do you make decisions? Are you a list maker? Are you a gut instinct person? Whatever it is. I have a client actually who makes decisions with Post-its. She plays a game with Post-it notes, and she writes all of her things, all of her feelings, the pros, the cons, you name it, on Post-it notes. And then she goes to her wall You're going to love her. I need to introduce you to her. Then she goes to her wall and she like divides the line. And every exercise I did with her was a post-it exercise. And everything was designed that way because that's how her brain thinks. So for her to be able to make decisions, she needs to do that post-it exercise. So whatever it is, when you're thinking about this big decision, do you feel expanded or contracted? And then sort it that way.
And just one note on that is a lot of what I do with my clients is I have them do the functional and emotional pros and cons. So dig a little deeper, but it's the same sticky note idea, right? You want to know what the pros are and the cons are for you emotionally if you take this job or take this role or take this project or buy a new house or buy a new car. And what are the functional pros and cons? And my first executive coach is the one that taught me that. And it has changed the dynamic of how I make decisions if I do it. So I think number 3 is really important on that note. Am I forcing momentum or am I allowing it? Because forcing drains and allowing sustains. So if we go back to trust the process, right? That really reinforces that. And then ultimately, and I love this question, what would trusting myself look like here? Not the world, not what everybody else says, not the timeline, just me, even if I can't explain it. So that's what I talked about, that gut feeling, like analyze that just for a minute. Take a second and step back, sit back in your chair, straighten your hips, go for a walk, whatever it is. I was just doing a little PT reminder for myself in there, just so you know. But I think it's really important. Okay, I just have to make one comment and then let's wrap up because of timing. I was filling out, and I've been dying to tell you this, and I should have told you this when we started, but now I'm afraid I'm going to forget. Now I'm going to share it with everybody. So I'm filling out all the paperwork when I got to the PT today, and I get to like the second to last document, and it's called the laser focus, right? So they want to know like what's going on with you, where does it hurt, why does it hurt, what are the number, what's the pain meter? But there was like a whole checklist of questions around like what ailments do I have, and one was just female problems.
Okay.
And I looked at the receptionist. She was hilarious. And I said, how do you define female problems? And she said, heavy menstruation, light menstruation. That was an actual box to check. And I said, well, I've got all kinds of female problems, but they're not any of the examples.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't call them problems. This is part of our anatomy. And did a man write that? What a weird thing. You know what I thought you were going to tell me? I thought you were going to tell me that you put me down as your emergency contact.
Oh. Next time. But I want on there. That's hilarious. What I want on there is male problems then. If female problems, then what are male problems? And then I gave them, and I'm not going to share on the podcast, I gave them a whole list of male problems that they should consider.
Was it a start with an E and end with a D?
Part one of them did, but there were others that dealt with itching and scratching as well. So we'll just leave it at that. But they were peeing in their pants because I was on a roll. All right.
You were their favorite patient of the day.
I know. Oh God, we can talk about female problems. Whatever. I'm like, okay, it is 2026. We need to change this language. Good God. Okay. So what's the challenge this week? What do we want to have everybody do?
All right. So 3 things. Well, besides the framework that we gave. Number 1, pause before your next big decision. Mm-hmm. Number 2, listen to your body. Mm-hmm. And number 3, notice the timing. Okay, 4 things. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's really the framework.
That's it. Simple, easy. And listen, this audience, by the way, we have not yet gone live on all of the big channels, and we've put it on YouTube, and we are getting such awesome, beautiful traction. Thank you to everyone. Tag us, message us, tell us where you're pushing, you're pausing, you're walking away, what you're trusting. Share with us. Ricky and I meet many people for coffee every week. And it's just so fun to also hear your stories. And if you have something you want to share, maybe it'll end up on a future podcast. And just trust your timing, friends. It's never, ever too late.
Ever. And never random. So remember that. Thanks for listening, everybody. And keep shooting the shit in the skirt. Bye.
Bye.